With the English language and literature exams just around the corner, I want to show you your winning strategy to get top marks every single time across your language paper 1 and paper 2 exams, as well as your literature paper 1 and paper 2 exams. And how do you get top marks every single time? It's by giving your examiners what they want. And what are your examiners looking for when you sit these exams, these all important English GCSE exams, and when they're marking and giving you top marks for your responses? Your examiners across every single paper that they are marking are looking at the quality of your analysis. I'm going to repeat. When it comes to your English GCSEs, it's not so much writing a bunch of quotations in your response. It's not even about you consistently talking about the question. What your examiners want to see is when you are quoting from the text and the example that you've given in response to the question that you're given across language or literature, do you unpack it enough and do you analyze it and go into depth in terms of unpacking meaning, talking about how we as readers, or if you're talking about a play, how we as the audience respond to it and what specific language and words connote. And what I want to do within this lesson, especially for those of you guys who are aiming to get 6s, 7s, 8s and 9s, is I want to break down this very vague term relating to analysis in 3 simple steps. Follow these 3 simple steps in every single English language paper 1 and paper 2 exam that you sit, and in your literature paper 1 and paper 2 exams that you sit. And depending on how many of these steps that you follow, you will be getting amazing results and amazing grades every single time. So guys, what I want to go over is, and I'm going to use an example taken from a model answer that I wrote for my GCSE Sunday masterclass just this Sunday gone, where we went over and where I showed them how to write a model response for question number 3 in language paper 2. This was the June 2022 exam. What I did as I was going over, especially analysis, is I broke down literally step by step how they analyze. Remember guys, that analysis is not you adding more quotes, adding another point, then another quotation, a point and a quotation. That is shallow. That is not going to get you amazing marks. Analysis is you taking at least 1 quotation, if not 2, within the same paragraph that you're discussing and describing, connecting back to the question, and then doing a deep dive, then unpacking the meaning of that quotation, and more importantly, talking about, for example, reader effect, talking about what associations we have with specific words. That's what's going to get you those top marks every time. And by the way, for those of you guys who are stressing about your literature exams, okay, because remember that you're going to have your literature exams first before your language, paper 1 and paper 2 GCSE classes, or exams even, don't forget that on 5th of May all the way to the 9th of May next week, okay, so this is May bank holiday weekend, I'm going to be having one-off final literature paper 1 and paper 2 masterclasses going over how to write and how to do amazingly in Macbeth, Christmas Carol, Inspector Calls, unseen poetry, as well as power and conflict poetry. So for those of you guys who are really stressing about your exams on the 12th of May, make sure you join in. Let's get into it. Firstly, just to be clear, the example I'm going to be using, but this approach can be used across your English GCSE exams, okay? The example I'm going to use is taken from the June 2022 paper. The question was for question number 3, which was, how does a writer use language to describe the effects of the rain and the storm? Now, these 3 steps are after you have major opening point relating to the question and then added your evidence, okay? So just to be clear, guys, these 3 steps come after you add your opening point, then your quote, and then this is how you analyze. By the way, this is the quotation that I'm going to be analyzing and explaining how you unpack it and analyze it is the following, okay? So the question was, how does the writer use language to describe the effects of the rain and the storm? And the point that I'm making, the point that I'm starting with, is saying that the writer describes the rain and the storm as quite threatening, quite menacing, and causing panic across the campsite. Okay, so there was a place, the insert that was given was showing rain suddenly falling on a campsite and people went scrambling, right? So the opening point I'm making is the writer describes the rain and the storm as menacing, quite threatening, and creating panic. The quotation that I'm going to analyze and show you how to analyze is the following. Suddenly there's a score of activity. That's the quote. Very nice, very compact. Now this is how you analyze, okay? And I'm going to go in stages. I'm going to show you what a grade 4 to 5 analysis looks like, then a grade 6 to 7, and ultimately what a grade 8 or 9 analysis looks like. Have a look. Think about what you want in terms of your GCSE results, and then based on what I explain, you then see, okay, how close am I to getting that 6 or 7 if I'm aiming for a 6 or 7 based when I think about my own analysis versus 8 or 9 or versus 4 and 5, okay? So the quote, suddenly there was a score of activity. Step number 1, this is what you now do after you've opened with your point and your evidence. You always start with the writer's technique and link it back to the question's keywords. So of course the question's keywords are the rain and the storm. Now you've added your quotation, and then you then mention technique, either language technique, for example, the sibilance, alliteration, so on. Obviously for question 3, it was to do with language. However, say for example, if this question is in connection to question 4 to do with structure for paper 2, or if you're talking about something relating to literature paper 1 or paper 2, you then just use a different form of technique. Now, at this level, if when you are explaining this and you only talk about the writer's technique, you're probably operating at a grade 4, right? So you've opened with your point, evidence, then you, for example, this is what a grade 4 or 5 analysis looks like, okay? Based on this quotation. The writer uses sibilance technique, so I'm making it really clear that I have an understanding of the writer's use of methodology, okay? In this case, it's sibilance. The writer uses sibilance in suddenly and squall to convey the terror, the rain and the storm created. The reason why this is a grade 4 is, number 1, I am answering the question, I'm relating it back to technique, I'm showing an awareness of subject terminology, but also more importantly, number 2, I've not gone in the description, in the direction of describing what the phrase is showing. I'm actually now analyzing and saying, okay, so this is the technique and this is a little bit of the effect. However, if you leave it at this and then you go on and find another quotation and then make another point about technique and then another quotation, you're probably going to be stuck at a grade 4 or grade 5. Now, if you want to start moving up to a 6 or a 7, this is what you still add to the same paragraph, okay? So after you start off in step number 1, talking about technique, then what you need to do is go a layer deeper in your analysis by zooming in on one particular word from your chosen quotation and then talking about its effect. Label that word and then mention effects. So in this case, you then mention, for example, so if you, in the same point, you then said, the verb squall, which is one of the words, depicts just how much noise the campers made as they scrambled for cover. So in this paragraph, if you first mentioned technique and you added this, talking about, for example, sibilance, then you picked out one particular word and zoomed in and then mentioned what this demonstrates in connection to the quotation. At this point, when you do that, you're probably operating at a grade 6 or a 7, depending on how much detail, how much words you have added in your analysis and in your explanation. However, if you still want slightly more, you're aiming to get an 8 or a 9, you then need to go to step number 3 of your analysis. We're still on the same quotation in the same paragraph by adding this. You need to talk about and relate it to effect on the reader. If, for example, for literature, you're talking about, a play, you're then mentioning audience effect. But more importantly, you now need to start talking about connotations, the associations we may have with the one particular word that you have used and zoomed in on and done your word level analysis. And this is how you do so, okay? So the verb, so in this case, I'm talking about the verb squall, right? The verb connotes, it gives us associations of fear, and it is intriguing for us as readers in conveying how the rain and the storm triggered panic. Now, when you go through these 3 steps and with just the same quotation, you are analyzing, you are unpacking, and you're mentioning things like meanings, things like connotations, mentioning techniques, zooming in and doing some word level analysis. This is now how you start working your way up through the mark scheme and also getting closer and closer to what your examiners are looking for, which is, are you analyzing enough? Are you unpacking the information enough, okay? And again, guys, if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, this is great to see how one paragraph is written in a way that's analytical. How can I see a little bit more, right? Of course, I'll be going over this in lots of detail from the 5th of May, okay, bank holiday Monday, all the way to the 9th when I do my final Macbeth, Christmas Carol, Inspector Calls, Unseen Poetry and Power and Conflict masterclasses. And of course, for those of you guys who are seeking specific guidance on language paper 1 and paper 2, make sure you just simply join in my weekly Sunday GCSE masterclasses, which take place every single week to the final GCSEs at 5 to 6 p.m. So thanks so much for listening.